Our top story right now is about how Republicans are using their power in the House. We all saw Kevin McCarthy clash with those hardliners. And during those clashes, when he had to get all of his votes on the House floor, he promised all kinds of concessions, including promoting what was then his most ardent foe, Matt Gaetz, to a pivotal committee devoted to basically looking at government investigations and attacking the FBI and DOJ. And that itself is a shift in Washington's power dynamics. This is important for the story I'm about to tell you right now. For decades, members in both parties lobbied to get on committees like Armed Services and Appropriations, controlling money, or some sought prestigious assignments like Foreign Affairs. Now, these hardline Republicans are angling to be involved in investigating the investigators. That's the committee they want on. It's partly about politics, because there is a political fixation on the deep state or on Hunter Biden's laptop, and that's a daily thing for some of these folks, and they just do that year after year after year. That's the politics. Well, then there's the media, which relates to the politics. But this is about media attention and the loop between Fox News and the GOP that pushes these stories and pushes the Republicans who lead the charge and makes stars out of some previously unknown members of Congress, something that we have all seen. I bet even if you don't watch Fox all the time, you're familiar with how this works. And let me be very clear, because I want to break this down. Sometimes the cycle starts at Fox, and they book and promote those people. Other times it emanates from congressional Republicans, which brings us to how Speaker McCarthy is using his power to give surveillance footage from January 6th, which is a big deal, exclusively to Tucker Carlson, and facing backlash over that. Meanwhile, over on air, Carlson is saying that even though they haven't reviewed all the footage yet, he thinks it contradicts the story about the insurrection.
We think already that in some ways it does contradict that story.
Does contradict that story. He's talking about the footage they got that they haven't seen yet. And that is a tell. Because it shows this is not about following the evidence, watching those tapes, sifting through them, seeing what they might show you. It is about pushing a narrative that minimizes the insurrection and hypes some phantom and future evidence, regardless of whether they actually get it. It's not working off that evidence. Now, if that approach sounds familiar, a kind of a backwards investigation, that's how Bill Barr ran the hyped but failed review of the Mueller probe. There were leaks. Barr gave interviews. He predicted future information, even bombshells. They never came. In fact, Barr's prosecutor lost the cases that did come out of it, and none of them were big to begin with. They never discovered or proved some deep state conspiracy that they'd promised. And they made some pretty controversial efforts to find any kind of dirt they could to discredit the original probe of Trump. So that is the model. That's now being applied to this insurrection, which has been convicted as an actual sedition. But for Carlson, the sedition, he says, was, quote, not violent, not an insurrection. He thinks the people who did violently storm the Capitol on behalf of Trump, to him, they don't look like terrorists, whatever that means.
Of all the things that January 6th was, it was definitely not a violent terrorist attack. It wasn't an insurrection. An outbreak of mob violence, a forgettably minor outbreak by recent standards. You see people walking around and taking pictures. They don't look like terrorists. They look like tourists.
They don't look like terrorists to him, because I guess he has an idea of what a terrorist looks like. But they're convicted seditionists. Sedition is domestic terror against your own government, rather than, say, a foreign government. Now, that person you just heard, Mr. Carlson, is who Speaker McCarthy is elevating on an exclusive basis to review the attack footage, an attack on McCarthy's own workplace and his own colleagues. And we know McCarthy is faking all this right now. And I don't say that lightly. I won't say that if I can't prove it to you. I won't just say it if I suspect that he's not telling the truth. That's not good enough. We know on this particular story, in the heat of the moment, during that attack when no one knew how bad it would get or if the Trump fans would effectively go further and murder members of Congress or assassinate Mike Pence, as they publicly clamored for, in that moment, McCarthy condemned the violence, publicly calling on those Republican attackers to stop.
I completely condemn the violence in the Capitol. What we're currently watching unfold is un-American. I am disappointed. I'm sad. This is not what our country should look like. This is not who we are. This is not the First Amendment. This has to stop, and this has to stop now.
That was what he said. That was McCarthy's truth. By the way, in court, that kind of statement is actually deemed more credible, an excited utterance, because in panic and fear, the courts have found that's when the truth might seep out, even from someone like McCarthy. Now, he's contradicting all of this right now. He's elevating Carlson, the insurrection minimizer, who is one of several hosts under heat right now, by the way, for the alleged defamation in the related lies that fed the insurrection. For McCarthy, this is clearly about politics, not truth, let alone the safety of his colleagues in the Capitol, if he's considered that at all. McCarthy is literally already fundraising off this gambit, giving the stuff to Tucker. He's trying to publicly link himself closer to Tucker Carlson. Now, you might stop and say, okay, Ari, but aren't top Republicans always tight with Fox News hosts? Why would the Republican speaker, who's the top Republican in government right now, need to further that alliance? Well, again, the answer is in the evidence. You can't just assume that all Fox hosts and Republican politicians are tight, even if they might publicly admit they vote the same way. And in a twist, Carlson has actually been blasting McCarthy as a Republican in name only, telling viewers McCarthy is a puppet of the Democratic Party. You can see it written out on screen. He also calls him a Democrat or an MSNBC analyst or a D.C. lobbyist with no real core.
Congressman Kevin McCarthy, a man who in private turns out sounds like an MSNBC contributor. We will have a Republican Congress led by a puppet of the Democratic Party. He's in fact ideologically agnostic. He's flexible. His real constituency is the lobbying community in Washington.
Carlson views McCarthy as a flexible stand-in, a political puppet who responds to power and will say what his puppet master demands. One day it could be the donors, another it could be Matt Gaetz, another it could be a Fox host. And Carlson's attacks have engineered a kind of meta demonstration of the alleged puppetry, with McCarthy making an unusual show of fealty to his on-air tormentor, maybe in the hope of never seeing a Fox News banner about being a puppet again, which is a very puppety way to try to avoid being dubbed a puppet, when you think about it. Just as McCarthy did rush to formally and publicly appease Trump after initially briefly criticizing Trump's role in the insurrection, he's now trying to appease an insurrection defender by offering him the strings to be the puppeteer of the Speaker of the House, which is not just any puppet. It might all be comically low-key pathetic if the stakes were not so high. And now tonight, we turn to a special guest who knows the politics and, in this case, the puppetry. A man who ran the Republican Party, even earning his own tribute puppet in a very different time right there on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Former RNC chair Michael Steele is here now. Welcome back.
Hey, good to be with you, Ari. Younger days, my friend, younger days.
Well, you know the politics and the puppetry. I mean, there's a fact.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I know how those strings are oftentimes, woven together and how they should be cut at times. And you laid out such an incredible indictment of this speakership and the gentleman who holds the chair, because it really is at its core about, I want the power, give me the power. What do I have to do to get it? And what do I have to do to keep it? As has been reported, McCarthy's admitted, I promised Tuckums that I would do this. I promised them that I would give over this footage. So what else has been promised? I mean, I think we should all be bracing for that, because there's more of this to come. I also find it very curious. Clearly, these two individuals don't speak to each other, meaning Tucker and McCarthy, because McCarthy on January 6th said, I condemn this. This is awful. This is not who we are. And Tucker was like, well, these are just tourists.
Right.
What are you talking about? These are just tourists. So which is it? Were they just tourists or were they terrorists?